execute again.
There. All right, if not, let us proceed. Do you have a motion?
Adopt your rules of procedure, sir.
That's right. Where are they?
Right under the boldface tag.
I got it. If we have to have time to look over the procedures for this meeting.
They've got the rules adopted.
It's been moved by Mr. Dominic that we adopt the budget meeting rules, and Ms. Baker has seconded. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, all right. Everybody in favor? Yep. Okay. Next, I'll entertain motions at this time for the budget amendments.
I have one amendment.
Yes.
On behalf of Commissioner Lynch, offer an amended ordinance number 4927, capital outlay funds, and ordinance number 4946, capital improvement funds, to provide an appropriation of $20,000 for renovation to the Commission Clerk's office, which will be funded through bond proceeds.
Second. Stephens seconded that. Is there any discussion on that motion?
I didn't hear it.
Please repeat your motion.
I'd like to amend ordinance 4927 from the capital outlay fund and ordinance 4946 from the capital improvement fund to provide an appropriation of $20,000 for renovation to the clerk's office, which will be funded through bond proceeds.
I believe we discussed this at last week's meeting. Does anyone have any comments or discussion on this motion?
How much will it?
20,000,
Okay.
yeah. If not, let's vote on Mr. Pearson's amendment. All in favor? That passes. Anyone else? Mr. Epson?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend ordinance number 4937, Riverboat Fund, and ordinance 4940, Economic Development Fund, to incorporate changes that were recommended by the Finance and Appropriations Committee in the November 30th, 2009 meeting. Caddo Soil and Water Conservation, $5,000. Christian Service Program Institute, $30,000. Kind Inc., $5,000. Northwest Louisiana Food Bank, $50,000. Freeport Symphony, $30,000. Urban Support Agency, $29,000. Women of Vision, $15,000. And that would be under the Riverboat Boarding Fee Fund. On the Economic Development, I'd like to, fund number 4940, I'd like to amend it for an appropriation to the Chamber of Commerce, Shreveport Chamber of Commerce, in the amount of $30,000.
Second. Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Mr. Epperson, care to comment? No. Mr. Thibodeau.
I just had one question about the money for the Chamber of Commerce. Are we going to specify in there that's to be used for our industrial parks to try to bring in economic development for our industrial?
We're working on their firm requirements right now.
Okay. We'll be sure that we specify that in the yeah.
So I don't have a question. I just want to just specify that when you had your finance and appropriations, that $30,000 would be transferred from the Riverboat Fund.
Couldn't understand you.
That $30,000 will be transferred from the Riverboat Fund. That needs to go in the amendment also, in order for us to make that transfer.
I'd like to make a correction that the $30,000 for the Shreveport Chamber of Commerce will be transferred from the Riverboat Boarding Fee Fund to the Economic Development Fund.
That too. You want somebody else to do that? Okay. Moved and seconded to amend his, correct his amendment. Any other discussion? Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to make an amendment
Yes, ma'am.
to the Riverboat Fund, 4937, to include the Martin Luther King Association in the amount of $10,000.
Second. Moved and seconded to include How many? $10,000 for the MLK Neighborhood Association?
Yes, sir.
Any discussion on that motion? Any other amendments? Okay, then we'll vote on Ms. Rose's amendment first, to amend it for the MLK Neighborhood Association. All in favor? And what is it? It passes.
That'd be 7.
That'd be 7, right. Okay, that fails. Next, we'll go to Mr. Epperson's motion. Pardon me?
President, let the record show that you're sitting in the president's seat where Ms. Lynch is absent and your vote shows in her.
Yes, Mr. Spears and Ms. Samuels were taking care of that. Thank you. Okay, now we'll vote on Mr. Epperson's amended motion. All right, everybody ready? Okay. Any other motions? Pass? Pardon me? Pass? Yes, it passed. I'm sorry. Yes.
We can't see it from some of the...
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's not on our screen, so we can't...
We're down? Okay, it passed.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move that all budget ordinances that are currently stated, as well as the ones that were amended, be adopted for 2010.
Second. Okay. Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on that motion?
I have one other amendment.
Mr. Thibodeau?
Like to, on ordinance number 4939, Oil and Gas Fund, like to move, transfer $17,500 of that to the Reserve Trust Fund.
17 million.
I'm sorry, 17 million.
I second that. Government money, not our money. I second that motion.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, wait a minute.
Commissioner Thibodeau, second by Commissioner Escudero. Any discussion? Commissioner Jenkins?
I'd like to make an amendment to Ordinance 4939-2009 Oil and Gas Fund, transfer 50% of whatever funds are available in the Oil and Gas Fund to the Reserve Fund, and the remaining 50% will be dedicated to future development, small business, quality of life, and non-recurring expenses purposes only.
Moved by Commissioner Jenkins, second by Commissioner Epperson.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I think on the rule that every amendment is voted separately. Isn't that right? Every amendment, because we're going to stack up on amendment here in a minute, so it doesn't matter if you only got one, but when you start having 2 and 3 and 4 of them, then they need to, according to our rules, need to be voted on individually.
Okay, Commissioner Epperson?
That's correct, and we can have subsequent amendments, and the last amendment that's put on the table first is voted on first in reverse order, so that will be the nature, so I would think that what we're doing at this time is in order.
Okay, I don't see any other commissioner. I'm sorry, Commissioner Epperson?
Okay, we got it. Okay, I would like to make an amendment to ordinance number 4939 of 2009, the Oil and Gas Fund. I'd like to transfer $5 million to the Reserve Trust Fund. I'd like to take $10 million, put it in the escrow for drainage and infrastructure improvements, working in conjunction possibly with some stimulus money to create jobs for the rural areas of the parish where drainage and infrastructure problems are a problem. I know especially in my district, and I'd like to take 10 million, sit it in escrow, have it for the developing areas of economic and community development within urban and other areas within the parish, if I can get a second.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Epperson, second by Commissioner Jenkins. Discussion.
Just a moment.
I don't see, Commissioner Escudé.
Okay. I'm going to support the original motion to transfer the 17.5. The amendments made, although are certainly have merit and are probably worthwhile and worth consideration, are very vague. We don't know what the specific needs are. They're not project specific. It's just tying up and dedicating money without a plan at this time unnecessarily. I'm going to support the original motion. Thank you.
Commissioner Thibodeau.
Those were my comments exactly.
You took the words right out of your mouth.
Well.
Okay. Commissioner Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam President. First and foremost, I don't think that we should be transferring any funds out of the oil and gas funds. I believe that when we originally set these funds aside, as Commissioner Escudé alluded to, the idea was that we sit down and formulate some plans for the money. I don't think that ever happened. And I also feel that moving monies right now without getting some input from the public is a bad indication to our citizens. When we have given every indication that we would consider what they had to say about these funds. The suggestion about moving the $17.5 million to the reserve fund, I understand it may be a worthy cause. I think that the reserve trust fund has a very noble purpose. But the bottom line on the whole thing is that we're moving that money there by simply saying that it's going to improve our bond rating. I just don't think that flies. Caddo Parish just received one of the best bond ratings in the state of Louisiana. And that bond rating was given with the funds just as they are now. A certain sum of money in the reserve and a certain sum of money in the oil and gas fund. I did not think it would ever get to a point where some of us would get together and make a decision and basically force that decision upon the rest of us. I thought that this was going to get to a point where we as a collective body could sit down and make some discussion about these funds. Even if you move the $17.5 million and then take a position that there's no plan for the remaining money that we dedicated, I don't think that flies either. You cannot have plans that are going to really move forward unless you got some money dedicated to it. Having plans without any money is just like having a car with no engine. It looks good, but it's not going to go anywhere. I see our small businesses in this parish who are catching a hard time because they're not able to get capital. We still have a lot of our young people who are leaving this area, and they're saying that they're looking for better opportunities. They're looking for quality of life issues. We got parts of our parish where our citizens, every time it rains, it becomes a flood area. There are a lot of needs that we should have considered other than just transferring this money and setting on it in the reserve trust fund. I wanted to state my reasons because I do not want to come across as simply being contrary about this. I believe that some money ought to go up to the reserve trust fund. I think it's a good idea to do it, but to take over half of the available discretionary money that we have and put it in a reserve trust fund where it is not going to really serve any better purpose than where it's at right now, I believe is a disservice to our citizens. And I do believe that we ought to send some signal to our citizens that we are going to consider them and we're going to consider their needs by dedicating some of these, the money that's here now for some future purposes that we can put behind. So I'd like my colleagues to consider that. I think a 50-50 split is fair. I think it's balanced. I think it would meet everybody's concerns that are up here, but more importantly, I think it would send the right signal to our citizens. We're going to look at investing in the infrastructure of our parish. We're going to look at investing in economic development, future development of our parish. So I'm asking my colleagues to consider the amendment for the 50-50 split. Thank you, Madam President.
Mr. Everson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When we developed the oil and gas fund, I think the initial motion was to take whatever revenues we had acquired up to that point in time, I think it was in June of 2008, and put them in the reserve trust fund. And I think the minutes reflected that the maker of that motion subsequently changed his mind based upon conversation with other commissioners and possibly other people within some lines of communication with him to put those monies over into the reserve trust fund. So I think, therefore, he and I, Mr. Jenkins, jointly sponsored the ordinance to come up with the oil and gas fund. So we could put those funds there. And the intent was to make sure that they weren't, I think originally they were going in the general fund. And my reason for it was to ensure that we would get with our constituents and the public and the taxpayers whom that money does belong to, see what inputs they would have relative as what they would like to see done or thought needed to be done. Of course, it had to pass legal scrutiny, which we were going to do. But I think that's the first and foremost place that we should start when we come up with the windfall. I think we have on the table now, we're possibly talking about going back to the constituents this spring to renew the 1.955 or whatever that millage is. And I just think it would leave a bad taste in their mouth, and I don't think that they would have the mindset to support that if they knew that we were sitting on $31 million and we wanted to grab it and put it into somewhere where it would. There's a stipulation in the reserve trust fund. It has to be a 2/3 vote. It has to be an emergency situation. And based upon this is communication that I've received from constituents within my district, homes that are valued $500,000 or so, and it looks like lakes there. When I campaigned in 2007 for this position, those were the issues that I was accosted with, which they stated had been going on for a significant period of time. So I said, what's the problem? No one. Well, they say there isn't any money. But if we want to grow Caddo Parish, and if we want citizens to come here and build homes, we have to have the good basic infrastructure that's going to draw them. I wish y'all could go out here on Kelly Lane and BB, out in the Greenwood and surrounding areas, and see these places. These are people that are paying substantial amounts of tax dollars each year, and we're saying that, hey, we don't have the money, we can't do nothing. I think someone told me, one of my constituents told me that somebody said we already did more than we should have done. But I mean, that's not an answer. And then I see a proposal for some future bond issue projects, I think totaling $24 million. And I see down on the public works, I see $2 million. Well, infrastructure improvement is not always just overlaying streets. You know, we can overlay a street, and if it's under 3 foot of water, it doesn't do a bit of good. That's not going to grow our parish. I think we are doing these people a disservice when we don't really sit down and try to find out what we can do. My reason for proposing this, hopefully we can maybe work with this, with some of the stimulus money. And we're talking about creating jobs. Can you think of a better way of creating jobs besides building and construction? And I just think it's a shame in this day and age, whereas we are still having a massive problem with drainage and flooding in this parish that we've had 15, 20, 25 years ago. We should be becoming better and not worse. So I would hope that you will support me in this. And this isn't in concrete. What I'm putting out here today is something for us to think about. There are 12 of us here. We are all duly elected. And I don't think that I should make a decision on this substantial amount of money that we have and just put it somewhere without consulting my constituents first. And many of you had attended the community meetings that I've given, and you heard me state this to my constituents. It is my position before we do anything with these funds, I think we should come to you and see what your needs are. And there are some needs. There are some things that we can do, and there are some things that we can't. But I think we owe it to the public to come to them first and get their input. And then we come down here as a body, maybe get a committee together and come up with some things that we can do, and then bring it before the full body after we've consulted with our constituents. So today I ask for your support and your vote to put $5 million in the reserve trust. We have a AA plus, I think, bond rating now. And $17.5 million was not in the reserve trust fund when we went to, what was it, Standard & Poor's this summer and got a AA plus. But they knew we had the money in the oil and gas fund. So it's not, $31 million sitting over here in the oil and gas fund, plus $15 million in the reserve trust fund. That totals what? $56 million? Don't care how you look at it. Are you going to get any more interest for money in the reserve trust fund if you invest in the same place that you get in the oil and gas fund? I don't think so. Just went down to open up an account for my church the other day, and best I could do is about 1.5%. So I don't, So let's do this. This will give us a means of opening a dialogue. This will give us credibility, I think, with the public. So when we come and ask them to rededicate that 1.955 this spring, I don't think they'd have a problem with it then, because they say, you know what? They had all that money down there, and they didn't just grab and stick it somewhere and come up with excuses and make it hard for us to access, like we don't have enough intelligence to give input about what they could do with it. They consulted us, and we're going to go along with this. So I ask for your vote on this measure. Thank you.
Commissioner Cox?
I'm going to go along with the 17.5. As president last year, this was a goal set on my behalf, I guess. I can agree with other commissioners about what needs to be done with this money. In my district, I have talked to not only homeowners, business owners, and they says, well, what are y'all going to do with this money? I'm planning for the future. I've always said this, and I'll stick by it. If we do not plan our future, we lose. If we go off and I'm not saying spend money wastely or just put it somewhere for a fund or try to make small businesses. I run a small business. Nobody has to tell me how tight money is. The only way we can make things work here is to plan. I will not support anything else but the 17.5 going into the reserve trust. And if we have a constituent, I have flooding problems in my area too. That's why I get with Mr. Glass. That's why I get with the administration. And after I've been there enough, I make them see it my way. Because I have a ditch problem off Linwood right now we are working on. Hadn't done anything, but we're planning it first. Then we put the money toward. My constituents would rather find a way to take us into the future and do it the right way the first time. My dad always told me, if you're going to do something, do it right the first time. That way you ain't got to go back and redo it and apologize for doing something wrong. I'm not saying that the other plans are wrong. I'm just saying this is the plan that I like better. 8 votes gets you money out of this program if we need it. But putting it in there makes it more viable for projects when they do come up. I'll have to agree with somebody else came up. We don't know a lot about these other programs. Put the money money where it needs to go for right now, and if those programs come up with a plan on paper, a plan to start and finish, I'll support it and draw the money out. But until right now, I would suggest all my commissioners on this body vote for the 17.5, and let's go to work. Thank you, Madam President.
Any other commissioners? Make sure. Let me say that I agree with you, David, that if we fail to plan, we plan to fail to plan, we plan to fail. Okay? And when I heard that there were 8 votes in support of moving $17.5 million, before there was a meeting and a consensus of the entire commission, before there was a committee meeting held to discuss it, before there was any discussion of the committee of the whole with the administration, that did not happen. When this meeting occurred, where this meeting occurred, to come up with these 8 votes, I have no idea. When the discussion was made about discussing this with the public, and I know this is not a good thing to do in a court of law, attorneys, I don't want to go on hearsay. I know it's not admissible in the court of law, but we're not in the court of law. What I heard was, and I'm going to clean it up, what was said, but forget the public. That by the time this thing was done, it would be too late, and they would only be reacting to the decision that we made concerning this money. Now, we're planning, but I think we're planning to go down the wrong road with this. This body, particularly in the last couple of years at least that I can say, has been very collaborative, has kept a relationship with the public to the point that we have respect. I think people feel that we're moving in the right direction because we have kept the community, business leaders, those that are working with economic development. We have been collaborative and collaborating across the board, within Shreveport, within our communities, and even the region, even at the state level, and in some instances at the national level. All I see here is a plan to rat hole money, quote unquote. When we set that fund up, the purpose, well, it was a windfall. The year before, we had no idea that we would ever even come into that type of money. We spent probably the last, 6 years that I've been here talking about a lot of things that we would like to do, but frankly, we never had the money to even consider them before. And this was going to give us an opportunity to strategically plan for the future of Caddo Parish. Rat-holing money is not strategic. That's easy. That's an easy decision. But to involve the public and the stakeholders and work collaboratively together, that's a little bit harder for us to do. And I don't really want us to punk out on that. You're hearing different proposals today. You're hearing different reasons why we're doing, why people think, all of that. Some of it we're hearing from each other for the first time today. And I don't think that's fair to our constituents. I don't think it's fair to us as colleagues. And I certainly don't think it bodes well for the future of Caddo Parish for us not to sit in the room together and discuss this matter more than 10 minutes, I think, in a meeting a couple of weeks ago. And so I am not going to be supporting particularly moving. I'm not convinced any of it needs to be moved at this point until we actually sit down and come up with a strategic plan, and whatever excess that we do not need in relation to that plan, put it in the reserve trust fund. There's no dire need at this point to to put any money there. We have $11 million in there already. I think it's 11, is that right? It's about 11 million. There was a discussion last year when there was a recommendation to put 11 million in there as to just how much do we need in there. And I think at that time, the figure we were given in support of the 11 million that was recommended last year was $20 million. If we get $20 million, we need about $20 million in there for it to look good, or whatever you want to call it. And now, we've gone beyond 11 million. Now we're talking about, y'all help me add, $28 million? $28 million, 17.5 of which taxpayer money. They have no input whatsoever in what's going to happen with that money. We come up with an amendment today, and they're blindsided by what we're doing. And I understand the argument that that's what they elected us for, but they elected you to be a representative of them. And how are you going to represent if you don't even know what their input is? And I'm not saying, you know, I'm not any dumber than anybody up here, and I'm not any smarter than anybody. But I do know what the representation and being a representative is. And I don't assume that I know what my constituents want without asking them. I have a pretty good idea, but sometimes we're not on the same page. Or as my councilman says, sometimes teeth and tongue fall out. That's Joe Shine, if y'all just didn't know. But I just think we're on a slippery slope if we start to govern this way. And I think we're seeing some of the results of decisions being made outside of the public's purview. I mean, we see it, a little bit of it, what's happening in Bossier now. Decisions are being made across the podium. Public has no idea. They get blindsided. We've been there. We've been destitute. We've had layoffs. We've done all of that. We have an opportunity now to move this parish forward. That money is not bothering I don't know who it's bothering, really. It must be bothering somebody being where it is in the oil and gas fund. But why that causes some people to itch and scratch, I have no idea. And why there's such a fear to hear from the public, baffles me. Because this is a public body, it's public money, and we are public service. And so I just hope that as we consider these proposals that we will keep that in mind. I don't know if there's a rush to do this today as opposed to January 7th, January the 21st, or any other meeting that we have beyond today. I just don't know what the urgency is. And, so I would ask that we be mindful of all of that when we decide what we want to do with this money. Thank you.
Madam President?
I'm on the list. And then
Okay. Y'all, is it down?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's working.
Okay. Okay.
Hold on.
You were keeping the list?
No, nobody was raising their hand. I got Jenkins,
I think they
Thibodeau.
thought.
Well, yeah.
I'm freshman
they're
before
working.
Jenkins.
Dominic. Okay. And then.
Okay, this is what we're gonna do. This is what we're gonna do. Let's just go, District 1.
Then you go by who hadn't
Commissioner
spoken
Dominique.
first. That's our rules we adopted before you got here. So
Okay.
next would be
Who hasn't spoken?
Thibodeau, Dominic, and Lynn.
Okay, Commissioner Lynn.
Okay.
The fact that we've got... hadn't spoken either.
Okay, put
Is she on the
her name
list?
down.
Okay.
Yes, that's
All right. Okay.
So how are we going now? Let's get over
Said
it.
you were going
How
by
we going?
the
Lynn McCullough.
No, that's not by the district.
No, we
number.
going by this way. We're going by
We're
who
going
hasn't
by who
spoken.
hasn't spoken.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Commissioner Lynn, Commissioner McCullough, Commissioner Dominique, Commissioner Thibodeau, Commissioner Jenkins, Commissioner
We've
Escobar.
spoken, yeah.
May I speak, Madam
Yes.
President? The fact that we've got 3 different proposals on what to do with this money leads me to believe that we're not in a 100% 12-vote collaborative agreement as what to do with this money. With that on the table, if it moves to the Reserve Trust Fund, it makes one more vote, 8 votes instead of 7 votes, to spend this money. I would like to think that when we do get ready to spend this money, that there's 12 votes to spend it the exact way to help all of the people, the best way that we can help them, whether it's through infrastructure and drainage or infrastructure in a water municipality or some other idea that someone else has. I would like to see this board have 12 votes to spend any amount of that money any way that we feel that it needs to be spent to help the people, the voting body of Caddo Parish. Moving this amount of money, I would like to move it all to the Reserve Trust Fund. And the reason why I'd like to move it all to the Reserve Trust Fund is because it does take one more vote to spend it. Right now, that money could be spent with 7 votes, and I'd like to see it be 8 votes to spend that money, because 8 votes is that much closer to 12 votes. Thank you, Madam President.
Commissioner McCullough?
Yes, in addition to your comments, Chairperson and Commissioner Lynn, if we as a political body require other entities to submit proposals as to, for different monies to be funded for various programs, surely we would want our voters as a whole to have a say as to what is actually going to be done with the oil and gas money if it's to be transferred. If we require a proposal from the voters, surely we should have something written, something in writing as to what would be done with the oil and gas money. In addition to this most recent meeting, of course I wasn't a part of it, after 3 meetings with the Ways and Means Committee, also when it came up about this $17-some million being transferred to the oil and gas, it was so strange that only a discussion on the Martin Luther King Association, it was mentioned that that was one of the programs that would have to be excluded in addition to this little meeting that you might be referencing, Chairperson. That concerned me a whole bunch. I had several of my constituents to call me, and I understand that they've contacted some of you. As most of you know, and I shared with you, I have the documentation, if you'd like to see it. This body funded MLK back in 2003. They did not misappropriate any funds. According to having a qualifying application, that was read off also in the Finance Committee. And the MLK Association did qualify as a nonprofit. But I'm going to leave that to go here. I really wanted to know, are we really just discussing an amendment to the oil and gas right now? Because I'd like to come back and do another amendment to the Riverboat Fund. Thank you.
Commissioner Dominique?
Say a few words. I'll try to be brief. I don't think by moving the money is going to be considered rat holing the money. I think over the past, we seem to agree on most things that we vote on, but as everybody has different opinions and different ideas, sometimes we disagree, and that's just part of being a human being. That's the way each of us think. But I think it's a very financial prudent move by moving the money to the oil and gas. When our bonding attorney was here last week, this was brought up, I believe, and our bond rating is excellent. But I just think it's going to give us something to build on. The money was not in the oil and gas fund at the time the bond rating was done, but you remember our bonding attorney talking about this our reserve trust fund for emergency purposes. They've had the situation in South Louisiana with the hurricanes. We never know when something like that is going to happen, a tornado, a major disaster here in our parish. I think we're being financial prudent and looking out for the future of our parish by putting money in the Reserve Trust Fund, something that if something happened, we would have money there. It's always been my understanding is the oil and gas fund money that we're going to use was something that would need to be used that would benefit and affect the entire parish, not just one district, but something major that we would be able to say, look what the parish did with this money. I think by moving the 17.5, we're being prudent, and I'm going to vote for the original motion and ask for everybody's support.
Madam Chair, may I get a point of information? I just want to make sure we're getting factual information. Mr. Dominic, you stated that the oil and gas fund was not up when we went to the bond rate?
No, I'm sorry.
We did.
That the 17.5, if I said that, the
Okay.
17.5 was not in the reserve
That's
trust
right.
fund when we.
But we did have the oil and gas fund.
Did have it in the oil and gas fund. It
They were
was
aware
there.
of it.
That is
Okay.
true.
That's all I had.
Commissioner Thibodeau?
First thing that I wanted to talk about was this so-called meeting of 8. I'm supportive of moving the $17.5 million, and so that would make me one of the 8, but if that meeting ever existed, I wasn't there, didn't know about it, and I think unless this kind of talk, causes problems, and unless you can say that it is a fact, that's the kind of things that makes the public distrust us, because as far as I know, a meeting like that never took place. And I think it's unfair to say that unless you're here to say that that is a fact, you can prove it, and I would hope as president that you would have brought this to the attention of those commissioners who were responsible for being at that meeting, because that would have been an illegal meeting. Number 2, the money we would like to see the money moved to the reserve trust fund. We're not spending the money. It's not being spent, it's just simply being moved we'd like to see it being moved to another fund, and it requires 8 votes instead of 7 votes to move it, which means that we're going to have to be more accountable to the public, because it would require 8 votes to spend it instead of 7. And I think it would make us as a commission be more likely to come together. In fact, I would be very sad to see a situation where we came up with some idea to move money from the reserve trust, and we only had 8 votes. Even though that would be legal and it could be done, I think that would be very unfortunate. So, to me, the more money the more votes that are required to move large sums of money into what I hope will be long-term benefits for the parish, I think makes us more accountable. And since the money has not been spent and is not about to be spent until we decide how it's going to be spent, the public has all the opportunity for input that they could ever want. In fact, we haven't even officially ever held any meetings for the public asking them to comment on how they'd like this money to be spent. And I would certainly hope that before we were spending that money, that's exactly what we would do, that we would hold several meetings, let the public know what we had in mind, and then let them comment on it. So all we're doing is holding ourselves more accountable, because it will take more votes, at least one more vote, to remove that money from the reserve trust fund than it would to move it from the oil and gas fund. So I don't see where anybody's being blindsided here. The money's still going to be available, still can be used, but it's going to really be incumbent upon this commission to be sure that it's used for something that's very important. And I don't know what that is at this time, and I don't think any of us do, because we hadn't even talked about it. So I would ask you to please consider moving the $17.5 million to reserve trust. Make us more accountable to the public.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I want to withdraw my motion on the 50-50 split of this money. I think the thing that bothers me more than anything is not so much the amount, and it's not so much the fact that some money started in the reserve trust fund. It's the fact that we just didn't get the public input that I thought that we were going to get on the front end of this, and the fact that I don't think if we sat down, and these comments have already been made, I don't think if we sat down as a collective group to discuss this. So I don't withdraw that motion because I really don't want my hands in it, in any idea of moving money at all right now, and I think that's probably the better position for me to take at this time. So I'm withdrawing that motion. Thank you. That amendment.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, were you finished?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you're withdrawing your motion, you're the second? Are you?
I withdraw.
Okay. Commissioner Escaday?
I'll be brief again, second round. I think I think we ought to feel fortunate that we're sitting here, being able to wonder what to do with excess money when everything else just about in the world's wondering what they're going to do because they don't have enough money. But what we're talking about with the amended motion is to take it and obligate it without a plan, without any public input. And I've never proposed, and I don't think anybody on this body's proposed, that we sit on this money forever. But what I do think is that we're not going to wake up tomorrow like some local cities and communities around here and have to go to the taxpayers, our constituents, say we're busted, that, you know, we've squandered your money. So right now, in this uncertain climate, there's nothing wrong with squirreling away money. And I think we need to have a very good plan when it's time to spend it and on what we spend it on. And I think those things are in process. But we have no idea what the rest of the proceeds from the Haynesville shale will be. That's yet to be determined. We will have mineral royalty income very shortly coming our way. And we'll have a good gauge of what this is going to be. And you can project it out long term over a period of 10 or 15 years and get a pretty good idea of what that's going to be. So I think being responsible and cautious and prudent in light of what's going on and in light of what we've seen happen in the city we live in, most of us, and in our own sister city across the river, is not a bad thing. And I also want to comment on Mr. Thibodeau's comments or piggyback on his. There was no meeting that ever took place that violated any laws. And I resent that implication and that anybody would imply that. The only meeting that took place was myself and two other commissioners, twice, trying to work out some of the details so that we could build consensus on this budget. But as the old saying goes, no good deed goes unpunished. So I can promise you, the last time, I'm going to devote my efforts towards trying to find consensus like this. When, you know, these accusations fly around about secret meetings and deals cut. Nothing wrong with moving this money. We need to move this money. When we go to spend this money, this windfall, this gift from God, or whatever you want to determine it, that has been bestowed upon this parish, I agree with Mr. Thibodeau. We need a consensus. We have an opportunity here to take this money and leave a legacy. Leave this place better than what we found it when we were elected. And by rushing, we're not going to accomplish that. And I will not be any part of that. I want to move this money. We have a good budget here. There's some people sitting here I'd be very happy with some of the things they've gotten. And if you're not, it tells me that you want it all. You want everything your way or no way. Fine, we're only fiscally responsible when everybody's happy, and we're irresponsible when somebody didn't get what they want. It doesn't work that way. Thank you.
I'll try to be brief, too. I don't think I said that there was a meeting of 8 commissioners, and I certainly didn't say that you were one of them, Commissioner Thibodeau, because you may have made up your mind when you came in today, so I wasn't saying that you were one of them. I don't think that there was a meeting of 8 persons at one time. I don't want to give that impression that I'm saying that there was a meeting that violated any open meetings laws. That is not the case. When we created the oil and gas fund, that was done with 12 votes. Last year, when there was discussions being made about moving some of it, at the end of last year, 12 commissioners said no. Now, how do we get to today? And I know that politics, as one of my colleagues said, is the art of negotiation and compromise. And I know that we are going to disagree at times, Commissioner Dominique, and I know that, you know, it's not always going to be a 12-0 vote. But this is something that we started together on, and there is an opportunity for us to end this together on. Whatever that number is. I'm not saying that no money will be moved. I'm not saying that I don't know what that discussion will be. But I said what I meant, and I meant what I said, that there were 8 votes, end of discussion, to move this money. And before any committee meeting, before any discussion of with the committee as a whole, I was at the Standard & Poor's meeting when we met to get our bond rating, and one of the questions that was asked by, I think there were 3 was it 3 people that were there? What are you all going to do with all of this money? What are your constituents saying about all of this money that you all have? Instead, it seems like there would be, the lady said, and I'm paraphrasing, that it seems like it would be some type of, outcry that we just had all this money, and of course we assured her that we were going to be having those discussions, that there were some projects that we were looking at, and that we would be having those discussions as a body and with the public. Am I not remembering my recollection of that meeting? Commissioner Jenkins was there. Ms. Bryant was there. Ms. Wilson was there. But that was a very real concern for them, because our proposal did not have, it laid out how we were going to spend this money. And it looked to them that we were hoarding money, basically. But like I said, we assured them that we were going to be having those discussions, that we talked about the water project, the regional water utility district that's on the table, something that's probably going to take millions of dollars. We don't know how much of that we're going to have to kick in from the commission. But that was one of the questions. And they're coming about rat hole, and that was a quote. I didn't make that up. So, my previous comments stand on that. Thank you. I think the motion on the floor, yours has been withdrawn. You still have a motion on the floor. Could you restate it, please?
I move that $5 million be transferred from the oil and gas trust fund to the oil and gas fund to the reserve trust fund. That $10 million be put in escrow to look at projects for infrastructure such as drainage and roads within the rural areas of the parish. And that $10 million be put in escrow and proposed to be developed to look at community and economic development and community programs within urban and rural districts of the parish.
You all heard the motion. I think it was moved by Commissioner Epperson, second by Commissioner Jenkins. If I'm not mistaken. Please vote. Fails. The original motion to move the $17.5 million proposed by Commissioner Thibodeau, second by Commissioner Escudé, I believe. Am I right? Please vote. That motion passes. Okay. Hold on. I think I got Commissioner McCullough.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner McCullough?
Yes, I wanted to offer another amendment to the Riverboat Fund 4937 in regards to the $10,000 that had been proposed for the Martin Luther King Association. In speaking with a couple of the members of the Martin Luther King Association, they didn't have a problem with this $10,000 being transferred or given to the Lake Community Development. These two entities do at some time or another work hand in hand. They did not have a problem with the $10,000 being allocated to the Lake Community Development, so I would like to amend the Riverboat Fund 4937 for an additional $10,000 for the Lake Community Development.
I second that.
Okay.
Given the, I can't come in on my second?
Yes.
Given that it is used for the same purpose that the original amount of money that was given to this is used for. I think that's to operate the pool.
That's correct.
I second. Is that what you said? But I second it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Please vote.
Just a moment, ma'am. Okay.
The motion passes. Commissioner Epperson?
Let's see, how did we bypass the motion on the 17.5?
That passed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I want to if it wasn't any other, I'd like to make a motion to,
But there's some others.
oh, it's a mo, oh, okay.
Yesterday.
We're gonna do the same thing.